Marcus Chen stared through the observation dome of Outpost 23, his calloused fingers absently tracing the worn maintenance manual in his pocket. The endless starfield beyond the reinforced glass hadn't changed in the 3 years since he'd taken this assignment, but tonight something felt different. The recycled air carried an electric tension he hadn't felt since his academy days. "Maintenance cycle complete," announced AOIA, the outpost's AI assistant. "No critical issues detected." "Thanks, AOIA," Marcus muttered, knowing full well she'd missed the slight power fluctuation in Section 7. He'd fix it himself later, just like he fixed everything else on this forgotten piece of human engineering at the edge of settled space. At 32, Marcus was the youngest solar station engineer in the Frontier Corps and the last human crew member on Outpost 23. Budget cuts had gradually reduced the station's staff to a skeleton crew of maintenance drones and a single flesh and blood engineer. Most would have seen it as a career dead end, but Marcus found a certain peace in the solitude and the honest work of keeping the station's systems running. The first indication that this shift would be different came as a subtle vibration through the deck plates. Marcus straightened, his engineer's instincts suddenly alert. AOIA, long-range scan report. Detecting unusual gravitational distortions in Sector 7 Alpha, the AI responded. Configuration matches no known human vessel's signatures. Marcus was already moving, his worn boots clanking against the metal grating, as he made his way to the primary sensor array. The station's aging equipment might miss subtle anomalies, but after 3 years, he knew how to coax accurate readings from the temperamental systems. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive vessel materializing from what appeared to be a fold in space itself. Its design defied conventional engineering logic. Organic curves blended seamlessly with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with internal energy. "Well," Marcus whispered, "that's definitely not one of ours." The alien ship's emergence from its spatial distortion was anything but smooth. Energy readings fluctuated wildly, and Marcus could see clear signs of system instability. His trained eye picked out patterns in the chaos, cascading power failures, structural stress points approaching critical limits. OIA, open emergency frequencies, all known protocols. Before the AI could comply, a transmission cut through the station's communications system. The language was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, but the universal translator began working immediately. "Critical failure imminent, requesting immediate assistance, lives at stake." Marcus didn't hesitate. "This is Engineer Marcus Chen, Outpost 23. I'm reading severe system instability. Can you maintain your current position?" There was a pause, then a response in clearer, translated speech. "Engineer Chen, this is Ambassador Lyra of the Arxian diplomatic vessel Starwaver. Our primary containment systems are failing. We have less than 2 hours before total collapse." Marcus's mind was already racing through possibilities. The station's docking bay wasn't nearly large enough for a vessel of that size, but the emergency maintenance tether might work if he could modify it quickly enough. "Ambassador, I'm going to attempt an emergency link-up. Can you maneuver to these coordinates?" He transmitted a set of spatial parameters, already reaching for his tool belt. "Confirmed, Engineer Chen, but you should know, our technology is significantly different from human systems. The risk to your station—" "With respect, Ambassador," Marcus interrupted, pulling on his EVA suit with practiced efficiency. "If those containment systems fail, the resulting spatial distortion will tear both your ship and this station apart. I'd rather take my chances with incompatible technology." There was another pause, shorter this time. "Understood," proceeding to coordinates. The next 90 minutes were a blur of activity. Marcus worked with desperate precision, modifying the maintenance tether's interface protocols while simultaneously preparing the station's power grid for the unprecedented load it would need to handle. He'd done similar modifications before, but never at this scale, never with completely alien technology, and never with so many lives hanging in the balance. When the airlock cycled open to admit the Arxian delegation, Marcus barely registered their appearance at first, focused as he was on the critical power readings scrolling across his tablet. It was only when Ambassador Lyra spoke that he looked up and struggled to maintain his professional composure. The Arxians were tall, easily 7 feet, with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with their movements. Their eyes, vast and multifaceted, reflected the station's lights like living gemstones. But what struck Marcus most was their bearing, a mixture of rigid diplomatic protocol and barely contained anxiety. Engineer Chen, Lyra said, her translator rendering her words with crystalline clarity, I must admit, when we detected this outpost, we expected a full engineering team. Are you truly the only one? Marcus nodded, already turning back to his work. Budget cuts. But don't worry, I've had plenty of practice keeping impossible things running. He gestured to the readouts. Your containment systems are unlike anything I've seen, but the underlying principles seem similar to our quantum field generators. If I'm reading this correctly, the failure isn't in the containment itself, but in the power distribution network. A second Arxian, introduced as Chief Engineer Vax, moved closer to examine Marcus's calculations. Impossible. Our systems are too complex for a human to understand. Marcus finished, allowing himself a small smile. Maybe, but sometimes fresh eyes see what familiar ones miss. Look here. He highlighted a section of the diagnostic display. Your power matrix is incredibly sophisticated, but it's also remarkably rigid. When the initial failure occurred, the system tried to compensate by rerouting energy through predetermined pathways. But those pathways were compromised, creating a feedback loop. Vax's multifaceted eyes widened. You determined all this in less than 2 hours. Had to. We're running out of time. Marcus pulled up a schematic he'd been working on. I think I can help you bypass the damaged sections entirely, but it's going to require something unorthodox. We'll need to route power through the station's systems first, using them as a temporary buffer while we reset your primary matrix. That would never work, Vax protested. The energy requirements alone would overwhelm any standard power grid, Marcus agreed. But Outpost 23 isn't exactly standard anymore. I've made some modifications over the years. Ambassador Lyra stepped forward. The risk to your station is less than the risk of doing nothing, Marcus said firmly. We have maybe 20 minutes before the containment field destabilizes completely. I can do this, but I need your trust. The Arxians exchanged glances, their skin shifting through patterns of color that Marcus suspected represented intense communication. Finally, Lyra nodded. Proceed, Engineer Chen, and thank you. Marcus was already moving, his mind focused on the complex dance of power and systems he would need to orchestrate. As he worked, he couldn't help but smile slightly. After 3 years of solitude, he was about to attempt either the most brilliant or the most catastrophic engineering feat of his career. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that this was only the beginning. Time seemed to compress as Marcus's fingers flew across multiple control interfaces. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the station's climate control, but he couldn't spare a moment to wipe it away. The Arxian vessel's containment systems were deteriorating faster than initial projections had suggested. Power levels at critical threshold, Aoya announced, her usually calm voice carrying an edge of concern that Marcus had never heard before. Station grid stability at 63% and falling. Acknowledged, Marcus replied, not looking up from his work. Reroute auxiliary power from sections 12 through 15. Shut down everything except life support and essential systems. Chief Engineer Vax loomed over Marcus's shoulder, the Arxian's iridescent skin pulsing with patterns that suggested increasing anxiety. The interface protocols aren't aligning. This is precisely why cross-species engineering collaborations are forbidden by the Arxian Technical Council. Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. Good thing I never got that memo. His hands moved in a blur across the console, implementing modifications almost as quickly as he could think of them. ORIA, execute program Chen Alpha 7. The station's lights dimmed momentarily as custom software protocols, ones Marcus had written during his long solitary nights, began to reshape the power grid's architecture. On the main display, streams of data flickered past at dizzying speeds. Ambassador Lyra stepped forward, her massive eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "What exactly are you attempting, Engineer Chen?" "Your power matrix is too rigid," Marcus explained, still typing. "It expects perfect conditions, perfect responses. But engineering isn't about perfection, it's about adaptation." He gestured to the readouts. "I'm introducing controlled chaos into the system. Small, random fluctuations that will force your ship's computers to generate new power pathways instead of trying to force energy through damaged ones." "Impossible," Vax declared. "Our systems are designed specifically to eliminate such irregularities." "Exactly the problem," Marcus said. "Sometimes you need a little disorder to prevent total chaos. Think of it like teaching a dancer new steps by deliberately tripping them up. They either fall, or they learn to improvise." The analogy drew confused looks from both Arxins, but Marcus was already moving to the next phase. He pulled up a three-dimensional representation of the power flows between the station and the Starweaver. "RIA, begin power transfer sequence. Random variance pattern delta." "Warning," the AI responded. "Proposed sequence exceeds safety parameters by 300%. Override safety protocols. Authorization Chen Omega 9. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The station shuddered as unprecedented amounts of energy began flowing through its modified systems. On the main screen, the power grid's visualization became a storm of color and movement. "By the eternal stars," Vax breathed, his skin shifting to a deep purple of astonishment. "The irregularities, they're creating new pathways through the damaged sections." Marcus nodded, his fingers never stopping their dance across the controls. "Your system is learning to adapt. Now comes the tricky part." He looked up at the Arxins. "I need direct access to your ship's primary engineering controls." Ambassador Lyra's skin flickered with patterns of alarm. "That's absolutely forbidden. Our technical secrets will be completely irrelevant if that containment field collapses," Marcus interrupted. "I don't need to understand all your technology. I just need enough access to help it heal itself." Another tremor ran through the station, stronger this time. Warning indicators flashed across multiple screens. "Containment field stability at 28%, ARIR announced. Estimate total failure in 7 minutes." Lyra and Vax exchanged looks, their skin patterns engaging in what seemed like rapid debate. Finally, Lyra stepped forward and pressed her hand to a nearby console. Streams of new data immediately filled the screens, information about the Starweaver systems that no human had ever seen before. Marcus didn't waste time marveling at the alien technology. He dove into the data streams, his mind making connections and seeing patterns that might have taken others hours to recognize. The Arxin systems were incredibly advanced, but they followed their own kind of logic. And logic, Marcus had learned long ago, was universal. "There," he muttered, highlighting a complex series of energy signatures. "The containment field isn't just holding something in, it's holding something out. Some kind of temporal interference." Vax's skin paled to an almost translucent shade. "How could you possibly?" "Later," Marcus said firmly. "Right now, I need you to trust me one more time." His hands hovered over the final command sequence. "This is either going to save everyone or tear a hole in space-time. Ready?" Before either Arxin could respond, another violent tremor rocked the station. Warning klaxons blare as multiple systems approached critical failure. "Containment field at 15%, ARIA reported. 5 minutes to total collapse." Marcus took a deep breath, remembering his old instructor's words. Sometimes the only way to fix something is to break it completely first. His fingers flew across the controls one last time. Initiating full power transfer. AREA, divert all remaining power to the main grid. Execute program Chen Omega Final. The station's lights went out completely, leaving them in darkness broken only by the glow of emergency panels and the ethereal shimmer of the Arxen's skin. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then everything happened at once. Energy surged through the station's systems in patterns that defied conventional physics. The Starweaver's power matrix, guided by Marcus's improvised protocols, began to rebuild itself along new pathways. The containment field fluctuated wildly, then stabilized at a level that shouldn't have been possible given the damage to its systems. Containment field stabilizing, ARIA announced. Power grid reconfiguring, station systems, functioning within normal parameters. The last part was delivered with what sounded almost like surprise. Marcus leaned back in his chair, finally allowing himself to breathe normally. "It worked," he said, a note of wonder in his own voice. "We actually pulled it off." But as the emergency lights came back on, he noticed something in the Arxen's expressions, or rather in their skin patterns, that suggested this crisis might have been more than just a technical malfunction. "Ambassador," he said carefully, "I think it's time you told me what's really going on here." Lara's skin rippled with patterns Marcus hadn't seen before. "You're right, Engineer Chen. What happened to our ship was no accident, and I fear this is only the beginning." As if to emphasize her words, a new alarm began to sound, proximity warnings indicating multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel nearby. The real trouble, it seemed, was just getting started. 6 vessels detected, ARIA reported as Marcus brought up the tactical display. Configuration unknown. No match in human or known alien databases. The ships emerged from the darkness like predators, their hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light. They moved with an unsettling precision, quickly forming a hexagonal pattern around the station and the Starweaver. "The shroud," Ambassador Lyra whispered, her skin cycling through patterns of fear and anger. "They found us faster than we anticipated." Marcus's hands were already moving across the controls, implementing emergency protocols he'd hoped never to use. "Friends of yours, I take it. They are the reason we were fleeing," Vax explained, his own skin darkening to deep indigo. "The Shroud are extremists. They believe that technological advancement should follow a specific path. Any deviation is considered corruption." "And let me guess," Marcus said, diving deeper into the station's systems, "your people deviated." "We discovered something," Lyra confirmed. "Something that challenges everything they believe about the nature of space-time itself. They would rather destroy that knowledge, and us with it, than allow it to exist." The closest Shroud vessel fired a warning shot, a beam of dark energy that passed just meters from the station's hull. Marcus watched the energy readings with growing concern. Their weapons operated on principles he'd never seen before, somehow dampening the very fabric of space around their targets. "RIA, full power to defensive systems." "Defensive capabilities limited," the AI reminded him. Outpost 23 was not designed for combat scenarios. Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. Maybe not originally. He opened a secure channel to the Starweaver. "Ambassador, I need to know exactly what these ships are capable of, and more importantly, what they're trying to prevent you from discovering." Laura's skin shifted through complex patterns as she exchanged looks with Vax. Finally, she nodded. "Show him." Vax pressed his hand to the console, transferring a stream of data that made Marcus's eyes widen. Equations, theoretical models, and test results filled the screens, all pointing to something that should have been impossible. "You found a way to manipulate spatial geometry at the quantum level," Marcus breathed, his engineer's mind racing ahead to the implications. Not just bending space, but actually rewriting its fundamental properties. "The Arxian quantum reformation theory," Vax confirmed. "It would revolutionize everything: travel, communication, energy production. But the Shroud believe such power should remain solely in the domain of their gods." Another warning shot, closer this time. The shroud ships were tightening their formation. Incoming transmission, RIR announced. A voice filled the command center, distorted and cold. Arxian vessel Starweaver, you harbor forbidden knowledge. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will ensure your suffering transcends normal spacetime. Marcus was only half listening, his mind working through possibilities. The station's conventional defenses wouldn't last seconds against these ships, but maybe they didn't need to fight in a conventional way. Your quantum reformation theory, he said quickly, could it be applied locally? Say, to a specific volume of space. Vax's skin pulsed with confusion. Theoretically, yes, but we've never attempted it on a practical scale. The power requirements alone would be massive, Marcus finished. But we just proved we can handle massive power transfers. His fingers flew across the controls. ROIA, begin power cycling sequence Chen Delta 3. Ambassador, I need access to the Starweaver's theoretical physics database. You can't possibly be suggesting, Vax started, that we use your own discovery against them. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Marcus pulled up a schematic of the station's modified power grid. Look, the shroud ships are designed to dampen normal space-time effects. But what if we don't fight them in normal space-time? Understanding dawned in Lyra's multifaceted eyes. You want to create a localized quantum reformation field. Better, Marcus said, his hands never stopping their work. I want to create 6 of them, one around each ship. But instead of trying to control the reformation, we let the fields collapse chaotically. Vax finished, his skin brightening with excitement. The spatial distortions would tear their ships apart. Another shot from the shroud ships, this one close enough to make the station shudder. Warning lights flashed across multiple panels. Hull breach detected in Section 4, ARIA reported. Sealing emergency bulkheads. We need to work fast, Marcus said, already implementing the necessary modifications to the power grid. Ambassador, I need your people's expertise with the quantum calculations. One mistake, and we could end up destroying ourselves instead of them. Lyra moved to one console while Vax took another. Their hands moved with incredible speed, entering streams of calculations that would have taken teams of human scientists years to develop. The shroud ships fired again, this time striking the Starweaver's outer hull. The massive vessel shuddered, its newly stabilized systems straining under the assault. Field generators at 70%, Vax reported. We need more power. Marcus's mind raced. The station was already operating well beyond its designed limits, pushing it further risk to complete systems failure, but the alternative was certain destruction. RIA, divert all remaining power to the field generators. Shut down life support if you have to. Warning, the air responded. Such actions will result in complete system failure within 10 minutes. We only need 5, Marcus said grimly. Execute. The lights dimmed as power surged through the modified systems. On the tactical display, 6 points of distorted space began to form around the shroud vessels. They're realizing what we're doing, Lyra warned, her skin patterns shifting rapidly. They're powering up their main weapons. Marcus watched the energy readings climb, knowing they were in a race against time. The shroud ships could destroy them with one concentrated blast. But if they could complete the quantum reformation fields first. Field strength at 90%, Vax announced. But the power grid is becoming unstable. Warning klaxons blared throughout the station. Multiple systems were approaching critical failure. The air was growing thin as life support systems shut down. But Marcus's focus never wavered. He'd spent 3 years learning every quirk and flaw of this station's systems. He knew exactly how far they could be pushed. Just a few more seconds, he muttered, making minute adjustments to power flow patterns. Come on, old girl. Hold together. The shroud ships fired as one, their combined weapons forming a sphere of dark energy that rushed toward the station and the Starweaver. At that exact moment, Marcus hit the final command. Now. Space itself seemed to scream as 6 quantum reformation fields burst into existence, enveloping each shroud vessel in a bubble of chaotic, rewriting reality. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the universe turned inside out. The shroud ships twisted, stretched, and finally shattered as space itself rebelled against their existence. Their weapon blast dissipated harmlessly as the spatial distortions consumed them. When reality stabilized again, the shroud vessels were gone, leaving only scattered debris drifting in the void. ARIA, emergency restart of all systems, Marcus ordered, already moving to restore power to critical functions. Ambassador, damage report. But before Lyra could respond, a new alarm sounded. The quantum reformation fields had worked, perhaps too well. The fabric of space around the station was beginning to unravel, and they had precious little time to prevent everything they'd just accomplished from becoming their own undoing. The real test of human ingenuity was just beginning. Warning indicators flashed across every screen in the command center as the quantum reformation fields began to destabilize. What had started as a desperate defensive measure was quickly becoming an existential threat. Spatial integrity failing in all sectors, ARIA reported, her voice fluctuating as the station's systems struggled to cope with the deteriorating reality around them. Estimated time to critical failure, 3 minutes. Marcus watched as the tactical display showed spreading waves of distorted space-time, like ripples in a pond. Except these ripples weren't just disturbing the surface, they were threatening to tear apart the fundamental fabric of reality. The fields are collapsing chaotically, Vax explained, his skin pulsing with patterns of scientific fascination despite the danger. Each collapse is creating cascade effects through local space-time. Can we contain it? Marcus asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be simple. Impossible, Lyra declared, her own skin showing patterns of growing concern. The energy release from the shroud ship's destruction has catalyzed the reaction. Traditional containment methods would be useless. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, discarding conventional solutions as quickly as they came to him. They couldn't fight this with standard engineering. The forces involved were too vast, too fundamental. Then a crazy idea struck him. What if we don't try to contain it, he said, his fingers already flying across the controls. What if we redirect it instead? Redirect it? Vax's skin rippled with confusion. Redirect it where? Not where, Marcus corrected, pulling up a complex series of calculations. When? Understanding dawned in Lyra's multifaceted eyes. You want to use the temporal properties of the quantum reformation effect to fold the distortion back on itself, Marcus finished. Like a snake eating its own tail. AOEA, begin power recalibration sequence. We need to modify the station's deflector array to generate a temporal inversion field. Warning, the AI responded. Proposed modification exceeds all known safety parameters. Probability of success, less than 7%. Better odds than we have right now, Marcus muttered, his hands never stopping their work. Ambassador, I need access to your ship's temporal shielding systems. We can use them to create a resonance pattern with the station's field. Another violent shudder ran through the station as reality continued to unravel around them. Through the observation windows, space itself seemed to be cracking, showing glimpses of something that human eyes were never meant to see. 2 minutes to critical failure, ARIA announced. Laura pressed her hand to the console, transferring control of the Starweaver systems to Marcus. What you're proposing, it's never been attempted. The complexity of synchronizing 2 different species' temporal field technologies. Then it's a good thing you've got a human engineer who specializes in impossible modifications, Marcus said, managing a grim smile. Vax, I need you to help me calibrate the resonance frequencies. We have to match them exactly, or this will make things worse instead of better. The alien engineer moved to assist, his fingers dancing across the controls with incredible precision. Together, they began the delicate process of aligning two fundamentally different approaches to manipulating space-time. 90 seconds to critical failure. Marcus barely heard the A's warning, his entire focus on the intricate dance of energy and fields they were attempting to orchestrate. It was like trying to conduct two different orchestras, playing two different pieces of music, and somehow making them harmonize. Primary field alignment at 60%, VAX reported, but the power requirements are increasing exponentially. RIA, begin emergency power extraction from all non-essential systems, Marcus ordered. Reroute everything through the main deflector array. The lights dimmed further as the station diverted every spare bit of energy to their desperate plan. Temperature controls failed, leaving them in rapidly cooling air. Gravity began to fluctuate as auxiliary systems shut down. 1 minute to critical failure. Marcus's fingers flew across the controls, making microscopic adjustments to field strengths and resonance patterns. Each change brought them closer to alignment, but also closer to total system failure. Field alignment at 80%, VAX announced, but the station's power grid is reaching critical levels. Through the observation windows, they could see the spatial distortions beginning to curve, responding to their combined fields. But they were also intensifying, reality becoming more unstable with each passing second. 30 seconds to critical failure. Almost there, Marcus muttered, his eyes fixed on the readouts. Just need to. There. The field suddenly snapped into perfect alignment. Energy surged through both the station and the Starwaver as their combined technologies created something entirely new, a temporal inversion field that began to draw in the chaos around them. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself began to fold, the distortions being pulled into a central point like water down a drain. The view through the windows became a kaleidoscope of impossible geometries as reality rewrote itself. Field stability at maximum, VAX reported, his skin pulsing with patterns of amazement. It's working. But Marcus wasn't celebrating yet. The power readings were still climbing, threatening to overwhelm their already strained systems. We need to contain the collapse point, he said, making rapid adjustments. If it destabilizes. Before he could finish, a massive surge of energy ripped through the station's systems. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. The deck plating buckled as space itself screamed in protest. Emergency shutdown imminent, AOIO warned. Station hull integrity failing. Marcus watched in horror as their carefully constructed fields began to waver. They were so close, the spatial distortions were almost completely contained, but their systems couldn't handle the strain for much longer. In that moment, he made a decision that would either save them all or doom them completely. RIA, transfer all remaining power to the Starwaver. Everything we've got. Warning. Such action will result in complete station shutdown. Life support will fail. Better than reality failing, Marcus said grimly. Do it. Now. The station went dark as every last bit of power flowed into the alien vessel. For one terrible moment, they were in complete darkness, floating in a space that was trying to tear itself apart. Then the Starweaver's systems flared to life, its more advanced technology taking over where the stations had failed. The temporal inversion field stabilized, completing its work. With a final surge of energy, the spatial distortions collapsed in on themselves, leaving behind nothing but normal, stable space-time. As emergency power slowly returned to the station's basic systems, Marcus slumped in his chair, exhausted but relieved. They'd done it. Combined human ingenuity with alien technology to accomplish the impossible. But as he looked at the concerned expressions on the Arxen's faces, he realized this victory might have come with an unexpected price. Ambassador, he said carefully, why do I get the feeling that what we just did is going to attract even more attention than what you were running from in the first place? Laura's skin shifted through complex patterns before she answered. Because, Engineer Chen, we've just proven that our theoretical work isn't just possible, it's functional. And there are forces in this galaxy far more dangerous than the Shroud who would kill to possess such knowledge. As if to emphasize her words, Aoya's sensors began detecting new signals, larger ships, emerging from the deeper void. The game, it seemed, was far from over.